but there's only one place to start, and that's with what we're calling, for the moment at least, Froch Groves 2. Mike, the rematch is on. We've got a date, but yet no venue.
Yeah, the proposed date is May the 31st, and the venue will be a football stadium. A number are under consideration at the moment. It could be Arsenal's Emirates Stadium, might be Old Trafford in Manchester, but I've been sitting ringside as a fan and a commentator, as has Steve, for a long, long time. This is the kind of fight that turns you into a kid at Christmas all over again.
Well, in the history of British fighting, and we'll get this from both of you, but I'll start with you, Mike. How big a fight is it? Put it in the context of British fighting.
Well, this is the biggest rematch in British boxing since Nigel Benn and Chris Eubank met for the second time more than 20 years ago. And in the modern day indoor arena, you know, there's room to house at the O2 Arena, the Manchester Arena here, 20,000 people. This is too big for an indoor arena. It's heading to a football stadium, and that brings with it a special kind of aura, a special atmosphere for what is already a special fight. It has the key ingredients. It has antagonism, two men who don't much care for each other. It has the controversy of the first fight. And of course, also, it has this delicious uncertainty. Was the first fight stopped too soon? Was Groves going to be punished later on by Froch anyway, who often comes on strong later on in his fights? Very, very special night. In an era of padded records and reputations that are made of plastic, these are two men that can really fight. That's why we're all getting so excited.
Steve?
Yeah, well, they've both been involved in big fights indoors. They've been involved in fights that have set records, generated lots of money at the gate. But what I think we're going for here, and I know Mike agrees, is we're going outdoors without a doubt. Are we going above 50,000? I think if it's marketed and if it's pushed correctly, it's an awful big sell. You know, the 31st of May is nearly June, and we're still in the middle waiting for snow in February. So there's an awful long way to go. I think it'll go past the Theatre of Dreams, the night that Benn and Eubank finally, after a couple of years, got it back on 42,000. I think we'll go above what Joe Calzaghe did against Mikkel Kessler, 50,150 bought tickets. But more than that, Caroline, it's not just where we'll go. It's what these guys will split and what it will generate. This fight will generate more money than any other fight on British soil. And these two guys will make more money than any other two men have made sharing a ring in Britain. So that's more than Tyson made for his couple of appearances, more than Lennox Lewis, Nassim Hamid, Joe Calzaghe, any of the big ones, Ricky Hatton, any of them. These two guys will set and make history and set records out there.
We'll hopefully talk to both of them about that in just a few moments. But this has, as Mike was pointing out, Steve, thrown up plenty of questions from the last fight. Will we see those questions answered? OK,
well, this is what happened in the last fight. OK, George Groves was a massive underdog. Let's not forget that. He was a massive underdog and the crowd didn't like him. He'd been the one who'd been baiting Froch. He'd been driving Froch mad. And Froch was regal. Froch was dignified. George was a pest. He was a nuisance. He got the fight. He got the crowd stirred up. On the night, they booed him into the ring. He loved it. Within 2 minutes, he sent Carl Froch down so heavily that there was an argument at the time. We debated it during the break of whether it could have been stopped or not. He didn't. He survived Carl Froch. He came back. He was trailing on all three scorecards, but two of them quite close. And in the 9th round, he turned it round. And the big debate became about whether or not the referee had jumped in a little bit early, just a little bit early. Did he jump in early? It's almost become irrelevant now because we finally got the rematch. That's why it was so controversial, and it left so many questions unanswered. George Groves maintains he was okay. He wasn't. Carl Froch maintains it was part of the plan. It wasn't. So they're both deceiving themselves, and that's what makes this just so... It's a spectacular rematch. It's the ideal rematch. It's a Rocky-style fantasy rematch.
Is that what we're going to call it? Because we're a bit unsure what to call it tonight, the rematch or Froch and Groves 2. And we want to know what you think. 85058. You can join us on Twitter as well. Let me know what you think this fight should be called. The first fight was the Battle of Britain, but what name should we give to this one? Text 85058. You can tweet us at BBC5 Live. Steve, Big Daddy Bunce.
That's
you love
me.
a tagline. And we've seen some memorable names for fights. I've got a little quiz for you.
OK.
Shame we haven't got one of those dramatic reality sing-off heartbeats. Perhaps we'll get it halfway through. Which fights were given the following taglines? Ready?
Can Mike help me on this?
No.
OK, thanks.
Although this might actually refer to both of you. Beauty versus the Beast. The best. Sorry, that was me preempting that.
Beauty versus the best. I'm assuming David Hay was involved. I think Beauty and the Beast would have been him against Value of the Beast from the East. But no, Beauty for the Best, you've got me. Go on, what was that?
It was Gary Stretch, who was a part-time model.
Against Chris Eubank.
It was.
Golly gosh.
Almost there. Battle of the Planet. What tagline was that for?
Well, would it have been Joe Kawasaki against Bernard Hopkins?
Oh, he's good. You got a thumbs up
good.
from Michael.
Was it?
Yeah.
Did I get that one?
You did.
No, that's it. No more. I'm going to retire on
Three
that
more.
one.
I won't let you. Whose fight was The World Awaits?
Oh, shoot. No, not a clue on that one.
Mike, I refer to the good gentleman in the corner.
Oscar De La Hoya against Floyd Mayweather.
Such a loser, Steve.
No disrespect, but The World Awaits. That's rubbish, isn't it? I mean, that is a garbage strap for what remains, if I'm not mistaken, the wealthiest, the most lucrative fight in British boxing history. Sorry, in world boxing history. That fight. Oscar walked away with a tidy 50 million in his back pocket. Floyd with about 35. The World Awaits. What garbage! They didn't waste any money on the PR, did they? That's for sure.
All I asked for was one answer.
Sorry, guys.
That's all I wanted. Should have been The Wealthy Awaits. The Best of Enemies. What was that the tagline for?
Well, you know what? I did know this one, but we talked about it earlier on. That was a great one. It was David Hay and Audley Harrison just down the road here. I would have got that anyway, but we did talk about it earlier.
One almost for the full house. Who's fooling who?
Who's fooling who? Is this a Nigel Benn? Is it? Okay. Is it Nigel Benn against Steve Collins? Maybe the second one?
You know what? It wasn't. Mike?
I'm done on that one as well.
It was Eubank.
Eubank
Again.
won.
He's had you both times.
The NEC Birmingham. What a night that was.
Who's fooling who even? What should we call it then? Froch Groves, the rematch. Could it be that? 85058. There's some funny ones already. I'm not sure if I can read that one out that's just come through. You can text us on that or tweet us at BBC 5 Live. You know what? There's one main party who'll be part of that. He might have a say in what to call it as well. We're joined live by George Groves. Hi, George.
How you doing, guys?
Very well, thank you. I guess you don't care what it's called. You just care that it's on. Well done.
Yeah, exactly. I think my trainer Paddy came up with a good one. It should be called Mandated because he's been mandated to take on this fight that he desperately didn't want to take on.
That's how you feel then? I mean, because there was plenty of injustice. It's been rather messy, George. It's taken a while, hasn't it?
Yeah, you know, for eager fans and people who are getting through, bits and pieces of information. You know, we're desperate to know an answer here and now, and that's the world we live in these days. But there had to be a process, you know, to make this fight happen. One of those processes that I feel was for me to win my appeal with the IBF and force Carl Froch into fighting me or be shot for his IBF title. So, you know, all he done in the build-up to sign this fight was talk about all these other options. And honestly, I don't think he wanted this fight. I think he's being forced to take this fight, and that's great news for me.
When you put aside all the messiness that's happened around it, actually physically and mentally for you, have you got stronger since that fight in November?
Yeah, I like to think so. I think I always try and take the positives from every situation and try and learn and dissect everything that is happening and then take experience from it. I've been involved in big fights before my last fight, and I've been involved in big British rivalries as well. So I had a lot to draw from in the build-up to that fight. But yeah, of course, you know, I've had whole new experiences. I've been under a whole load more pressure, probably the most pressure fight that I've been involved in. And yeah, that's all going to be experience to take into the next fight.
Mike.
George, I remember standing next to you at the press conference table afterwards, and you were talking about the pain of the first loss on your record, and there were just tears appearing in your eyes. How long did it take you to get over that night?
Oh, you know, strangest feeling because I haven't been beaten by a better man. I've been robbed of my unbeaten record. The IBF, I feel, has aggrieved me, and that's why they've stated me as man challenger with an immediate rematch, so that Carl Froch has to fight me. And that's probably the best I could have ever hoped for. You know, I didn't for 1 second expect the British Border Control to go against one of their officials. They never seem to do that. So, you know, I'm going to have a loss on my record. It's not going to be the nicest thing, but to go out and beat Carl Froch, well, that's probably the next best thing that could possibly happen. So I think they're going to take a bit of satisfaction from that.
George, at what point during the last 11 weeks, because it's been that long, at what point did you finally think it would happen?
Probably, I met with Eddie Hearn probably like 10 days ago, and I told him where I was at, and you could see the relief on his face that, he felt that this fight was close. And even then, by the sounds of it, Carl Froch dug in his heels and essentially tried to price himself out of this fight. I can't go into details of the contract or the purse split because Eddie Hearn has asked me to sign a confidentiality agreement. He doesn't want that to be known. But, that was probably when I realised that, this fight is going to take place and that Carl has no other options. He's been told now that he doesn't have any other options, whether that be a financially lucrative fight for him elsewhere, being stripped now for his IBF title if he doesn't face me. He would have concluded that he's going to have to go through with the fight, and that was when I thought, right, well, this fight is definitely on. I was quietly confident that I'd get the rematch because I was quietly confident that Carl didn't have any other options. It was rematch or retire. I said it from day one, and I stuck to it, and I feel that is the case, and that's the reason he's taken this fight.
Just setting aside the animosity and the controversy for a moment, George, thinking back to your days as a young boxer at Dale Youth Amateur Boxing Club near the BBC studios in West London, did you ever believe that you would be involved in such a huge monster of a fight outdoors? There are so few fights. You will have known from growing up being such a fan, so few fights are big enough to go into a football stadium.
You don't understand the business side of things. You just dream of being a world champion and fighting on the biggest stage and owning every belt that ever existed and winning every fight possible. And as you get a little bit older, I realised that I am lucky to have a style that people would tend to enjoy, to have opponents out there to fight, and to be able to now be part of such a huge event that I've got opponents in my weight division in Britain as well that are I have a serious history with, a rivalry with that captures the public's imagination. People are always interested, and that's a blessing that it doesn't matter how good a fighter I become. That would have been out of my hands if there was no one there for me to fight. But then I would have been struggling. But I said that today. One of the first things I said when the fight was announced that I'm chuffed. I'm excited. I'm ecstatic that I've got this fight. It's a perfect fight for me, and I can't wait to take so many people on a fantastic journey. We had a great journey on the first fight with the build-up. Everyone got involved. Everyone was interested. It was a great night of boxing. It was a real Hollywood story in the end. Getting booed into the ring and cheered out. People are still talking about that now. People are desperate for the rematch. And, they're desperate for many reasons. Because they think the fight finished unjustly. But also, I'm sure, because they just want to see another terrific night of boxing. They want to see two guys go toe-to-toe. And they want to be there for every moment of the ride as well.
Now, George, before the last fight, you told me that Carl was too old, too predictable, and his best days are over. And for a few rounds, you seem to be making some of those predictions come true. Do you think Carl's made a mistake agreeing to fight you again?
Oh yeah, I said that many times. He's made a terrible mistake taking a rematch with me. The last thing he should do or want to do. And I said it, and I'll try not to say it too much because it doesn't need to be said this far out from the fight. But there's no positives you can take from the last fight. Absolutely none. And if you tries to break it down technically, you want to talk about hand speed, foot speed, my ability to hurt him. There's nothing you can cling on to and take him to the next fight, have any sort of strategy. All you can do is be able to train harder and run the risk of overtraining. He's going to have to look at Rob in the bracket now and say, Rob, I've put my trust and faith in you year after year, and we seem to get by. But what on earth are we going to do this time round? And I don't know what Rob's going to say to him, because what can he say to him? He can't say to him, Carl, just take everything he's got and we hope for the best and he punch himself out. Because other than that, they've got hope for a Howard Foster as referee again.
George, all the best of luck. Thank you very much for joining us on 5 Live.
Cheers, guys. Nice one. Bye.
Thanks, George.
George Groves on 5 Live Boxing. I'll get your thoughts, both of you, in just a few moments, but loads of text coming in, 85058. Jim in Luton says, contrary to what most people say, I think that this is more of a risk for Groves. Froch clearly underestimated him in the first fight, and he certainly won't make that mistake again. Groves had his chance, and he couldn't knock Froch out. Steve?
No, that seemed to be one of the theories floating around after the fight. Late into the night, we spoke to some people very close to Carl Froch, and without saying we underestimated him, we didn't prepare properly. They basically did say that, but they're never going to actually say that out and out, because it's an interesting thing, Caroline, and Mike will back me up on this. If your routine for your greatest fight was 500 rounds of sparring, 6 half marathons, 5,000 press-ups, you can replicate that. No two ways about it. You can do the exact same stuff. You can do the exact same sprints. You can do the exact same everything, but your mind's different. Now, there is absolutely no doubt that Carl Froch, the word's not underestimated, that Carl Froch had no respect for George Groves. He'd bashed him up in training. He'd dropped him either once, twice or 3 times, depending on who you listen to. All fibbers, so you can take your pick from the list of people telling you what happened. There's no two ways that he did not have any respect for him. He did the training. He was in great shape. But was he mentally right on the night? I would say 100% no. And during that first round of commentary, every time George Groves countered him casually with a right hand, I was sitting next to Mike, nudging him, saying, hey, listen, his head's not right. And that's the nudge. We have an understanding. And he knew what that was. And after the third nudge, the right hand came. Will Carl get in the ring with that same mindset? No chance.
So he's got that he can change in this time in the build-up to it as well, Mike. But lots also saying that opportunity has gone for George Groves, but he's still young. You know, he's one of those fighters that comes out, and certainly you're going to get impact from him.
Yeah, I think 2 key questions in the build-up to this fight are, can Carl Froch box that badly again? Can George Groves box as well as he did last time around? Now, there's nothing to suggest that George Groves won't actually improve for the experience. As he said there, it was another big night, another night to get used to, in his case, a hostile atmosphere, and to have turned that around, to perform at his very best when the stakes were at their highest. That's an absolutely key quality, whoever the sportsman or woman happens to be. But the other side of that particular argument is, can Carl Froch possibly be that bad again? Or, at the age of 36, after so many hard world title fights, has he lost his edge? There are so many questions here, and that's why they together build this glorious uncertainty about this contest. And that's what boxing needs more so than any sport at the moment. And in a year like this, such a congested sporting calendar with so many massive events headed by the World Cup, even the Winter Olympics, which we're less interested in the main, if anybody gets near a medal or a gold medal, we start to go and get very excited about it. We're going to have Wimbledon again. Whether Andy Murray gets there fit or not, we're going to have an Open Golf Championship through the summer. There'll be a Test Series through the summer. It's in that congested marketplace boxing has to survive. Commonwealth Games, European Athletics Championships. That's the marketplace within which boxing has to survive. And it cannot unless fights like this are being made.
So it needs it. Boxing needs this fight to happen. We'll hopefully get the thoughts in just a few moments of Carl Froch. We'll put some of George Groves' points to him as well. And George was saying that he's signed this confidentiality agreement with Eddie Hearn, the promoter, over how much they'll receive. We'll get your thoughts on that in a minute, Steve. But here is Eddie talking to 5 Live Drive about how those negotiations took place.
The bottom line is, listen, it's a huge fight. And, you know, there is a lot of money involved in this fight. But ultimately, you know, these two don't like each other, and the negotiations wasn't really based around the money. It was George Groves feeling that he needed to get justice by the IBF ordering the rematch. Carl Froch had many options leading into this fight. You know, he's in the latter end of his career. There was a chance to fight Julio Chavez Jr. In Vegas, which is something Carl's never done. But ultimately, when the IBF ordered the rematch, Froch would have had to vacate the belt, which he could still have done, or fight Groves. But he doesn't. Carl Froch doesn't vacate belts, and You know, it's this mentality of I will fight anyone, and that's what he's had throughout his career.
Carl Froch had many options, says Eddie Hearn. So why turn to George Groves again? Well, let's ask him. The champion Carl Froch joins us. Hi, Carl.
Hi.
So you spoke about wanting to fight in Las Vegas next. What made you change your mind?
I think the big fight at the present, and let's say a bird in the hand, and all that, the old saying. It's now, isn't it? And I think the British public had demanded it, and I didn't realise how massive it was actually. The postman said something to me the other day. He never talks to me usually, and then the dustbin man said something, and I thought, "How you doing? All right, Jack?" Yeah, his name's Jack. I didn't know who he was, and everyone's talking about it. So I thought, you know what? I'm going to have to fight this kid again. I'm going to have to. I've got no choice. And then it was made mandatory by the IBF, let's not forget. So, if I was to take the Chavez fight and go to Vegas, which is something I still want to do, then it wouldn't have been for the IBF. So it takes a bit of the gloss off that fight, only being for one title, the regular WBA title. So, no, the fight that makes sense for everybody involved was the rematch with George Groves. And, with him being mandatory, I didn't want to vacate my belt because I always think there's a bit of I don't know, it is a bad taste in my mouth, vacating belts rather than fighting mandatory. Even though I've already fought him, I just thought, you know what, this is the only fight for me, so I'm taking it, I'm having it. I don't care what people say or what they think, whether anyway, I'll stop talking. Next question.
Go on, Mike.
Carl, you have fought in the United States. You say Vegas is still on your checklist. What does it mean to be fighting in a football stadium, even though at this stage we don't know which one?
Well, there's two things I want to achieve before my career is finished, and one of them was Las Vegas. The other one is a stadium. I do think the stadium fight is actually more glamorous, if that's the right word, than fighting in Las Vegas, because not many British fighters get the opportunity to fight in an outdoor open event, and the stadiums, obviously, they're massive. To get 30, 40, 50 or even 60,000 people in a stadium, for me, it's just a massive personal achievement, and to be involved in a fight of that magnitude, it's better than going to Las Vegas, let's be honest. But obviously the Vegas thing doesn't go away. It could still be there potentially. I've got to do the job in my next fight, and then I can still keep that last dream alive.
Carl, you said that the postman and the dustman in recent days or weeks have been asking you when it's going to take place. Have you really been able to ignore what Groves has been saying over the last 11 or so weeks?
Yeah, I've ignored it. I've put it behind me. I mean, I had to listen to a lot of his jive talk on the build-up to the fight last time. I probably let him get under my skin, to be honest. And I didn't pay him enough respect. I'm not talking about physically being underprepared, because I'm always very sort of prepared physically I know what I need to do to get my body in great shape. I mean, I think I've got about 6 pounds in weight to lose in the next 14 weeks. I'm always in good shape. But mentally, I can be guilty, and I need a slap on the wrist off Robert McCracken. Mentally, I didn't take George seriously. I really didn't. I was switched off. I didn't really give him any respect. But by nature, it's difficult. I've done a business with him in sparring, and when he first turned pro, I was doing a bit of just helping him out in the gym and just moving around with him with a delicate jab. So I couldn't look at George Groves as a serious threat. But that's gone now. Now I know that George Groves is a threat. He's got my attention. Anyway, let's just say he's got my attention. And that in itself already makes me motivated and makes me excited. And I know that I'm in a totally different frame of mind for the rematch. There's people are going to say he's 36 years old, he's getting old. Yeah, I am. I'm 36 years old. And yes, I'm getting old. I've been a pro over 10 years. But physically, the human body is an unbelievable machine. But mentally, it's got to be right. Now, the mental state of mind is more important than the physical attributes of the human body. So as long as I get my mind right, I'm going to do the business, and I'm very, very confident.
Carl, you've only been floored twice in your career, and the knockdown in the first round against Groves was much heavier than against Jermaine Taylor. It doesn't necessarily follow, but was that the hardest you've been hit in your career?
No. I stepped in with a right hand, if you watch. I sort of caught Groves with half a shot, stepped in. I was square on when I got caught. If George Groves would have thrown a jab, I had nowhere to go, I would have fell over. Anybody who sort of knows boxing, I'm not saying you don't know boxing, Mike, because I know you know boxing very well, but I was square on when I got hit flush on the chin. Don't get me wrong, it was a big shot, it was a heavy shot, but it's not the biggest shot I've ever been hit with. And I'm not to take anything away from George Groves. But the person who's hit with the biggest shot is a guy called Robin Reed. You might remember him. He gave Kawasaki a bit of a tough fight one night, got a split decision loss. But that's the hardest punch I've ever been hit with. The George Groves shot was hard, obviously, but because I was caught square on and I was paying no attention to my usual boxing ability, which is getting behind the jab and, do what you're supposed to do and not take shortcuts, then, I paid severely and I got decked in round 1. It was a good shot.
Carl, let me ask you this. During the last 11 or so weeks, you've had a lovely Christmas at home. You've had some time to reflect on it. Your bruising's gone down. Your body's no longer stiff. Was there at any point there, did you think that perhaps you might walk away with nothing? You've got nothing left to prove. You've done all you need to do. Was there any point you thought you might walk away?
If I'm totally honest with you, Steve, yes, there was. There was probably a few days where I thought, you know what a fantastic career I've had. Oh, what have I done? I've had, 4-time world champion. I've been in with Jermaine Taylor, my first defence. I've been unbeaten Pascal. I'm not going to go over all my name. You know what I've done.
Yeah, of course.
But I was just thinking I've had a fantastic career. And, I don't really mind the fans booing me and the ones turning against me, because on the night, there was left a bit shortchanged. The ref, I thought, did a fantastic job. So there's nothing against Howard Foster. He did a great job. But the fight, from the layman watching the fight, it was stopped a couple of seconds too early. I can be honest enough to admit that. The fight should have been left to reach a natural conclusion. So, that whole saga with it and the whole, bitterness in people's mouths and the stick that I've come under, since that fight, no fault of my own. The referee did the job he thought he had to do. And unfortunately, I came under the firing line. But it's been give and take on both sides. I'm sure George Groves has got his fans and his haters, and I have too. But, a couple of days of thinking, do I turn it in? Do I not fight? That lasts for 2 or 3 days, and I think, you know what? I'm missing running. I'm missing hitting the bag. I'm missing thinking about going into a big fight. And then when they start talking about the rematch and start talking about the venue and the stadium, and, I just get so excited. The hairs on my neck are standing on now. I absolutely love boxing. I love the sport. I love it. And as long as I can physically get for it and mentally be switched on for the fight, I'm still going to do it. And at 36 years old, I'm not an old man, and I haven't had a hard career, and I'm not trying to convince myself. If you look at my fights and look at the amount of shots I do take a few shots, but I'm not an Arturo Gatti or Ricky Hatton or them type of fighters. And I've only had 33 fights. I've had 34 fights. I've not had 40-odd fights. So, I'm not bruised and battered and ring-worn and finished off at 36. I'm a very young, clean liver, fresh 36, if I do say so myself.
Carl, you know what? It's been a pleasure sitting back and listening to you three discuss it, and real pleasure having you on 5 Live Boxing. So thank you for joining us.
Pleasure.
The young, tender-looking
Cheers,
Carl Froch at 36 years old. Plenty to run through there, boys. And honesty from him as well. He admitted he underestimated George Groves. Let him get under his skin, Steve.
Yeah, what he said was, he said he didn't underestimate him. He said, I didn't have the respect for him. He said, I was prepared physically, but I wasn't prepared mentally. And, we're not being after-timers. We gain nothing by patting each other on the back, Mick and I. After a round, it was clear that was what we thought on the night, and I'm sure we said it during that 60 seconds between round 1 and 2.
It also shows how dangerous it can be taking sparring as a guide, which he clearly did.
And you know what? We missed an open goal because we forgot to ask him what he would call the rematch, the fight. We've had plenty of texts and tweets on that. 85058. What do we call this one? Froch Groves 2. Our fight name suggestions. David says unfinished business. Richard,
it's been used.
The Civil War.
It's been used.
Has it? Can you remember which ones? Reece says
years ago.
Going the Distance. Ryan, War of the Roses. And LM Vickery, Civil War 2. Any of those?
No.
He's so hard to impress.
No, I've just seen Carl Froch on the giant screen out there in the square here, look.
He's coming for you. Everywhere you look between now and then, Carl Froch and George Groves, writ large. You are